right. What is up, everyone? I was proposed to do this. A couple people on Mike's book reviews site, and I haven't done one of these things yet. So I was trying to get all fancy and wanted to have the books collage that I make each year on the screen to do picture in picture, but technology couldn't figure it out. So I'll just put it in afterwards. But I'm not sure how many I'm going to talk about. Some people did a top 10. I'm not counting out a top 10. I have a collage, whatever fits. If you want to stop at 10, you can stop at 10. I don't know how I'm doing. I didn't count. So I'm just going to keep going. And I might do some honorable mentions. I might go off on tangents. I'll try and be vague about optimism or, good vagueness about each without giving away spoilers. So totals, I read 72 books officially this year, and the primarily all of them have been on, or what I read is Kindle, and I still do always a usually 1-to-1 of Kindle book, regular hardback or physical book at the same time. But this year was a lot of Kindle because I was in flux a lot. I was in the middle of a move, kind of a nomad living for a good bit of the year, and I do a couple of audiobooks every once in a while, but they go a little bit slower just because it's I'm either doing it when I'm doing some kind of workout or walking or not too much driving since I work from home. So to kick things off this year, top breed, top book, and I know he pops up on a lot, and that is Wrath by John Gwynne. And I know most people who have read Faithful and the Fallen have Ruin as their top book of the series. And a couple of reasons why mine's not Ruin. For one, I've read Ruin in 2019, and I took a long break between Ruin and Wrath, about 6 to 8 months, because I think I just need a break a little bit. John Gwynne really knows how to end a book for sure, and Ruin just kind of wrecks you at the end a little bit. I know some people that would want to jump straight from Ruin to Wrath because of how it ends on kind of a cliffhanger and a big moment. I kind of already knew what was to happen with the two characters in question because I read the synopsis for the follow-on trilogy. And I wasn't in that much of a rush to get into it, but I felt like it was a good stopping point. There was I think it was just a good stopping point after Ruin. So I did Wrath, and I finally finished it up. Come on. Stupid autofocus. Okay. So yeah, I finished up Wrath after I took that long break, and it was just, once I got back in, it was fantastic to be back in the Banished Lands. Autofocus seems to be having issues right now, but other reason why Wrath would be over Ruin anyway, because I just like Wrath a little bit better, and Ruin didn't even wreck me the most out of the entire Banished Lands. Valor actually did, surprisingly, but the conclusion of Wrath was just fantastic. Everything was tied up really, really nicely. The battle was awesome. It was huge. It was almost like exhausting how long the battle was, but it was absolutely fantastic. I think every single character had a great ending, except I think one. I wasn't a fan of one of the main females ending. Don't really need to get into that, but everything else, John Gwynne writes fantastic books. Faithful and Fallen is fantastic, nearly flawless. Nothing's flawless, but it was epic, awesome. Next, moving right along to on my collage, we're going to do a Trader's Blade. This one was all really, really fun read, and I got my wife to do the read along with us for the 4 books in the Greatcoats series, and this was a lot of fun. I really like the sometimes the character driven type books and the camaraderie between it, the banter, the differences between them. I know sometimes I prefer in my fantasy to have multiple POVs, and sometimes it can be kind of exhausting to just be with one person. But because the other 2 guys are always there, it's not like you're going for, oh, I wonder where so and so's at right now. The other 2 companions are pretty much there the entire time. So it's still really great to be in Falkio's head and go through the series. And I picked Trader's Blade because I think it encompassed the tone of the entire series the best. You're in the brand new world. You're getting used to these characters. The action is fresh. Trader's Blade was fantastic. It was a whole lot of fun. Laughed out loud. There were some gruesome moments too. So it was a good mix of everything. And I got my wife to read it, and she also really liked it. Next on the list, we're going to do a mystery thriller, and a sidebar on this. I'm not sure when a mystery becomes a thriller and a thriller a mystery, or if it's all mystery thriller. I mean, in bookstores, they're all in the same on the same shelf, same aisle. But when describing them, I feel like it's become a mystery becomes a thriller when the uh, protagonist becomes flawed, and the more flawed they are, and the more of a pathological liar they are, it becomes a thriller. And then the Chestnut Man is one of the best mystery thrillers that I've read in a while, and what I did this year. And this is literally the only book on this entire list that I own the physical copy of, and it's downstairs, and I just don't feel like going to get it. So I'll just remain consistent. Chestnut Man, it's a Swedish mystery thriller too. And this year I was trying to read more international books, less um, American and I guess British authors, and having that sort of same mystery and thriller outlook. I read a Japanese one too that was very different, and this one was also really different as well. It's still similar to some of the other ones, but it's a lot longer. I think this was like 700 pages, and for a mystery thriller about, or I'll just say mystery about a serial killer, that's a long time. I would also wasn't able, even with all the backstory and going through everything, I wasn't actually able to guess the killer until like within 100 pages, and it was still like, yeah, I think this is it. This would make sense. So it's still a really good reveal, and this the psychological side behind it was really really cool. Next, my first Stephen King. Now, to go for another sidebar here, I've never read Stephen King until this year, and I will blame and credit Mike from Mike's Book Reviews that got me into Stephen King, because I was definitely under the impression, one of the people that thought he did mostly just horror type stuff, that sometimes when an author has so many books, you kind of don't know where to start. So even though I've heard some of the other books are mysteries and thrillers and stuff like that, I wasn't even sure where to start or what was what, because it's hard to tell, especially with synopses. You don't really know. And I was definitely glad for some of the beginner books, but my best, my probably my overall most liked book was the Wastelands, so Dark Tower 3. But the very first one that I started with was Firefly or Firefight, Firestarter. I was gonna get there eventually. Um, that was the first one, and that's one I would actually still recommend. I'm only 5 books in to King now, and Firestarter is a fantastic way to start. But I think the best one would be Wastelands, the Dark Tower. Dark Tower has been really, really cool. It's really absurd. It's pretty crazy even now, and I've heard it just gets even crazier later. So keeping up with this, and it always kept me on my toes. And there's definitely times when reading King where I could read 50 pages and think, I don't even think much just happened in his last 50 pages. It doesn't seem like they did anything, but my attention was kept the entire time somehow, and that's just pretty cool. And it's different because like I might read for an hour or 2 hours. I read a lot of the Drawing of Three and the Wastelands while on vacation, and I would just sit on the beach and read for like 4 or 5 hours, which reading on the beach for Drawing of Three just made it that much better. uh, so going through that, I'd read for like 2 or 3 hours, and it's like, all right, what did I just read? What happened? Yeah, that was cool. This happened and that. Not a whole lot, but it's still all added to it. And I think it was really, really good. And just to see how the connections are. And moving forward, I'm definitely taking the Dark Tower really seriously, and I'm following along their sheets online to it's like the reading order for Dark Tower and all the other ones that go in for the multiverse. And it's been going really well so far. So I'll get more into the next one, whatever the fourth one is. I forgot, after I get some more of these standalones in. Next one, a little bit different. It is YA. I think it is the only YA on here, probably. Yeah, makes sense. And that is The Hand on the Wall, and this is uh, on these other ones. I did. I guess I didn't really do that. Hand on the Wall is book 3 in the Truly Devious trilogy, and it is really really cool. It is a YA trilogy, but it is a murder mystery, and it takes place at a school, so it's a really awesome school setting if you like those. And um, this girl that there's a 70, 60, 80, something like that year murder that was never solved. And this girl that studies at the school and the murderer, she knows everything about it. She finally goes to this prestigious school, and there's a lot of hidden secrets and stuff within the school, and she's going through and solving it, and there's a lot of twists and turns, and it was just really cool. It's also very environmental, so I think this is a really good winter read as well. It's if you read like October, November, December in that order for the trilogy, is it's really really good. It enhances it. Fantastic read, really fast. I blew through the second two books in 4 or 5 days. I think I read those, and I think my wife did as well. There's not a whole lot I can say more into it, but it is a really good, easy murder mystery. It's really, really good, and it's very environmental, and it might be something that is truly different that you might know. We'll go to the big one, next big one. That is Theft of Swords, Raira. This one I picked up over a year ago. I owned it physically, but we didn't have our physical books for the majority of 2020 because we were in the middle of move and they never showed up. So once they showed up, I was planning on reading this right when they came, and it was fantastic. I absolutely loved this book and the dynamic between um, the two main characters. They were a lot of fun, and it is two books, which on my count I count it as one book because it's weird to just split a book in half for how it works. But two completely different stories, and they were both really good. The political stuff of it was fun. The banter and the subtle jokes. This one had a little bit more subtlety than I would say the Trader's Blade did. Action was still good, and the world just got deeper and deeper, and there actually was some action and some decent things that would take place. Priority of the Orange Tree. This one was surprising to me, but it was really really good. And I think what was so surprising is we got it. It's a huge book. It's like 800 or 900 pages, and you don't typically see that. I think it is. It would probably fall into borderline YA adult because some of the content, I don't really know how they judge that now. It's all vague. But I could easily have seen this as being a trilogy. I'm not. I'm really surprised it isn't, considering how publishing works now. But it's just one big story, and it is fantastic. The world is so deep, and you would think reading fantasy there would be you think of like Renaissance or medieval type settings and dragons. That's like typical classic, maybe cliche fantasy. I haven't read too much with dragons, but this one, how they incorporated the dragons is really cool, not cheesy. It's almost like a religion. And with anything that, when you have people that worship one thing, you have other people that will demonize it and be completely against it. And there are countries or peoples at war because of this, and the dragons are at war, and a lot of moving pieces and how they connect. And the magic was very subtle. There's only a little bit of it, but what there was pretty cool, and the characters were interesting. There's only one character, the old guy. I don't even remember his name. He was really annoying, and I felt he served almost no purpose until the very end. And I was like, all right, I guess it's justified that he was in the book, a POV, because he did this, but he was pretty lame. Everything else was really, really good. Another read that I did with my wife, then she really, really liked it as well. This is one of the few rare reads that, because I read it on Kindle as well, and that I kind of regret not owning the physical copy because the book looks the spine and the dust cover looked really, really awesome. So I would recommend that. It is there is some it's not like going to blow you away with action. It's not going to blow you away with magic system. The characters are really good. It's I guess it's very character and plot driven, and then there's the lore that ties in behind it and how that goes deeper into that. So if you kind of like those very well woven stories, you would say multi-layer, I would say this one is really good. And even like there is a minor romance that plays a part in it, but it was very well executed. And um, I'm not a romance person. I don't like anything like that. That's why YA is not my cup of tea. But this one, it worked really well, and I think it accented it, accentuate, enhanced it. All right, first audiobook. So the only audiobook that I'm going to highlight here is the Dresden Files, and I'm only listening to them. The narrator for that is fantastic, and I listened to books 2 through 6. Okay, 2 through 6 this year. And I would say the best one was one that I just finished. That's Blood Rights. And that's because of how much deeper it got into Harry's background and Harry's life. and also just the fact that he had to uh, work on an adult films cruise site was pretty entertaining. Some of the other ones, they've been up and down and harder to follow, and like there is the previous two books. I think it was uh White Night, Summer Night. That one shit just got crazy to me. There was so much epic stuff happening. That was a really, really good one, but it was just the grand scale of it. This one, I like that. You know, a lot of series they always, and you see this in movies too, they always try and outdo the next and the next. You know, the Spider-Man 3, that was just shit like that happens. But with this, he actually Jim Butcher actually kind of like dialed it back, and it really, I think it's really helping enhance him going forward. It almost like the story kept me interested enough, and it was almost like a character building um book in the Dresden Files, because there's going to be 24 books. So it's almost like a character building book, but the plot was still really good, and it's really added a lot to it. Audiobooks, just another honorable mention would be The Last Kingdom. I started those, the first two. They're really good, way better than I thought they would be. It's a little hard to follow. He does some crazy stuff and is always changing sides, but it's really good. All right, coming back around to John Gwynn again. I have him on here twice. I'm not going to say too much about this because he's already been on here, and it's just a continuation of Faithful and the Fallen. Basically, this is the A Time of Courage, and that is the last book in the follow-on trilogy of Blood and Bone for the Banished Lands. So book number 7 in the entire continuation. This one was fantastic. Right when I finished it, it was one of those feelings where I was honestly sitting there thinking of the differences, pros and cons of that and Wrath, and deciding like which one I liked better, which one had the better battle. Both of the battles are epic and ridiculous and really, really cool how they twist and turn. There was also one or two deaths in here that really caught you off guard, and you're just like dropped your book and was like, "What the hell?" It was fantastic. The main characters still, like, some of them I didn't really start to care about until the end of that one, but it was really, really good. I would recommend, after you've if you read The Faithful and Fallen after you finish Wrath, take a break. It's like several months. You kind of want time to pass, because in between the series from Faithful and the Fallen to Of Blood and Bone, 100 years have passed. So I think you should at least let like 100 days pass or something. I took about a 6 month break between Wrath and A Blood and Bone, and then I went straight through that, and it was fantastic. It was a great time. Also, it was just the first book is kind of weaker, but you just feel so happy to be back in the Banished Lands that it was fine. I didn't even care that some of the characters were a little boring at first for the first half, and I just happy to be in the Banished Lands trying to find the connections. So that was really, really good. Next, An Unkindness of Magicians. This one, I'm not sure how many people will have heard of or have read. It seems to fly under the radar somewhat, but it is really, really good. And it is just a nice standalone palate cleanser with magic. Think of like Gangs of New York type of thing. There's these rival families that are vying for power, but it's set more modern day. And they're all magicians, and they kind of are, there's this competition, and they're all competing for who has the head seat that rules their little magic underworld, and whoever wins this competition. And excuse me, it is really, really good. And there's still behind the scenes maneuvering kind of thing. There's uh some family ties, some other stuff going on, and it's still a pretty fast read. I think it was only 350 400 pages, something like that. So I would really recommend this as a really good magic palette cleanser. I guess it would be urban fantasy because it does take place. I believe it takes place in New York. So if you like that sort of thing, it would be it's really, really good. And another book that my wife loved. And now the book that I just finished 2 days ago and was recommended to me by the same person that has me doing this video, or inspired doing this video, and it's Kings of the Wild. And that is uh that was a really fun read. I knew, I've always heard good things about it, and the band and the group, and you know, you look at the cover of the book, and it looks like it would be a lot darker and more grim, and there are dark times to it, but it was fun. It was another um great friendship camaraderie thing, and there probably seems to be a little bit of a trend here. I think 4 or 5 of my top books, there's a good camaraderie, a good friendship, good character ties. So with this, how I described it when I was reading it and talked to other people about it was think of the movie Space Cowboys with yeah, those guys. It's kind of like Space Cowboys to where they were these hotshot astronauts. They did some awesome things. They retired, they separated, never saw each other. Two of them fought, and now they got brought back together for a common thing, common goal. And that's basically how this one goes. So the banter is also a little bit drier than the Trader's Blade would be, but it was still really, really well done. And I also felt that it was really, really wholesome. So going through it, you're having fun, you're really caring about the characters, but it just felt wholesome at all kinds of turns and how they would integrate their backstories and how much you would find to care about them and just little subtle things. That was a lot of fun. The action was also really good. Sometimes hard. It's you're trying to picture all these crazy creatures as they go along because they're monster hunters essentially, and trying to keep track of that. Apparently, there's a lot of 70s or old time rock references that every single one of them flew over my head, except for one Elvis reference. Everything else, I think I think there was another pop culture type reference. I thought it was a movie though, not a song. I didn't get any of the music reference. So if you actually know that stuff, you might have a more deeper appreciation to it because I had no idea about that. And I guess that's it. So that was my top reads of 2020. I have no idea how many that is, and I had a few honorable mentions. I have you noticed there are no Brandon Sanderson books on here. That's because I didn't read any Brandon Sanderson in 2020. I had already done Mistborn 2 years ago, and Stormlight. I don't plan on starting until the end is near, to so to speak. I typically don't start series until they've already finished, so I'm kind of in the mind frame of what's the rush. We're probably going to find out the ending together anyway. So I moved on to other things, but next year I will plan on doing Mistborn Era 2 and hopefully like Warbreaker or something like that. But anyway, that is my 2020 top reads, and let me know what you think.